I thought my wife and I had built a strong, honest marriage. We weren't perfect, but we worked through challenges together, or so I believed. Trust, love, and commitment were the foundation of our relationship. Or at least that's what I thought. But all it took was one evening, one single conversation to tear apart everything I believed in. I remember the moment so vividly, like a stain on my memory that will never fade. She sat across from me at the dinner table, her expression calm, almost detached, as if she were discussing something trivial. In a voice devoid of guilt or hesitation, she told me about her boss, about his influence, about how a promotion was within her reach, but at a cost. At first I thought I had misheard her. Surely she couldn't have meant what I thought she did. But she continued, her words sharper than any knife. Her boss wanted a child with her. Not an affair, not some fleeting moment of weakness, a child. And she was considering it. No, not just considering it, she had already made up her mind. She explained it with a strange sort of logic, as if she were trying to convince me that this was normal, that this was somehow a practical solution to secure our future. I sat frozen, my fork halfway to my mouth, staring at her as if she had turned into someone else entirely. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to ask her how she could even think of something so cruel and disgusting. But I couldn't find the words. My throat felt tight, my chest heavy with a mix of anger, confusion, and heartbreak. This wasn't the woman I married. This wasn't the person I had trusted with my life, my secrets, my heart. I searched her face for any sign of remorse, any flicker of regret, but there was nothing. Just a cold, calculated confidence, like she had already weighed every possible consequence and decided this was the best path forward. What stung even more was how casually she dismissed my feelings. To her, my heartbreak was an inconvenience, something to be brushed aside so we could move forward and focus on the bigger picture. She talked about the money, the stability, the opportunities that would come with her promotion, as if those material rewards could somehow justify what she was proposing. I felt sick. Every word out of her mouth twisted the knife deeper into my chest. The woman I loved was standing in front of me, openly admitting that she was willing to betray me not just physically, but emotionally, morally, and spiritually. And worse, she expected me to accept it. I felt like I was trapped in some cruel nightmare, where the person you trust most in the world turns into a stranger right before your eyes. My mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, none of them offering a way out. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while she slept peacefully beside me, as if she hadn't just destroyed everything we had built together. I realized then that love isn't always enough to keep someone loyal, and trust can be shattered in an instant. The woman I thought I knew was gone, and in her place was someone I couldn't recognize, someone who was willing to sell our marriage for ambition. And in that moment, a seed of something dark and cold began to grow inside me, a realization that this betrayal wouldn't just fade away. I was at the beginning of a story I never wanted to be a part of, and there was no way to turn back. As if her decision wasn't cruel enough, they forced me to accept it. Her boss, a man of wealth and influence, made it clear that I had no choice. He wasn't just some corporate executive, he was the kind of man who could destroy lives with a few well-placed phone calls. He knew exactly how much power he had over us, and he wasn't afraid to wield it. His demands weren't suggestions, they were ultimatums. Wrapped in the guise of opportunities, my wife echoed his words, parroting them like a well-rehearsed script. She told me this was the only way forward, the only path to success, as if sacrificing our marriage and my dignity was some sort of noble cause. At first, I tried to fight back. I tried to reason with her, to make her see how twisted and cruel this entire situation was. But every argument I made was met with cold logic and dismissive glances. She'd already chosen her side, and it wasn't mine. Her loyalty was no longer with me, but with him, with the promise of a bigger paycheck, a corner office, and whatever other perks he had dangled in front of her. I felt trapped, cornered by two people who held all the cards while I was left holding nothing but my pride, and even that was slipping away. The worst part was the way she spoke to me, as if I was the unreasonable one. She acted like I was standing in the way of her success, as if my pain and humiliation were obstacles she needed to overcome rather than consequences of her own actions. There was no apology, no attempt to soften the blow, just cold indifference and an expectation for me to comply. I started to feel like a prop in my own life, a background character in a story where my feelings didn't matter. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how I ended up here. How did the woman I loved become someone I couldn't even recognize? How did I become so powerless in my own marriage? My home didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a prison cell, with every passing day chipping away at whatever strength I had left. Eventually, I stopped fighting, not because I accepted it, but because I realized fighting was pointless. They had already made their decision, and I was nothing more than an inconvenience standing in their way. But deep down, beneath the humiliation and the heartbreak, something inside me began to shift. If they thought I would simply accept this and play along forever, they were wrong. I might have been powerless in that moment, but I wasn't going to stay that way. I started paying attention, watching, listening, observing every detail of their twisted arrangement. My silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. I realized I had to play their game, at least for a little while. They thought they had broken me, but they had no idea what was coming. In the quiet corners of my mind, a plan started to take shape, a way to turn their betrayal back on them. For now, I would play the part of the defeated husband, but I wouldn't stay in that role forever. They wanted me to be compliant, to accept my fate and fade into the background. But I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. I was biding my time, waiting for the moment to make my move. The baby arrived, and with it the facade of a happy family. To the outside world, I was a proud father, smiling and supportive. I played the part well, showing up for every milestone, holding the child in my arms, and letting everyone believe that we were just another picture-perfect family. But inside, I was screaming. Every time I looked at the child, I was reminded of the betrayal, of the man who had taken so much from me. The innocent baby wasn't at fault, but it didn't stop the sting every time I saw the child's face. It was like staring into the eyes of my humiliation. I tried to convince myself that I could move past it, that I could somehow detach myself from the situation and just go through the motions. But it wasn't that simple. The baby's cries in the middle of the night, the bottles, the doctor visits, it was all a constant reminder of how little control I had over my own life. My wife carried herself with an air of satisfaction, as though she had succeeded in her plan and everything had fallen into place perfectly. She treated me like a necessary accessory, someone to fill the role of a father while she basked in the benefits of her promotion. Every smile she gave the baby, every glance she shared with me over the crib, felt like a mockery. She would act as if everything was normal, as if we were a united team raising our child together. But I wasn't blind to the cracks in her mask. There were moments, fleeting but noticeable, when guilt flickered in her eyes. Maybe she knew deep down that what she had done was irreparable. Or maybe she didn't care at all, and I was just seeing what I wanted to see. The house felt heavier with every passing day. The silence between us grew louder, and the tension became suffocating. We stopped having real conversations, everything was surface level and rehearsed, like we were actors stuck in a never-ending performance. I felt like I was losing pieces of myself, bit by bit, every day. But in that darkness, clarity started to emerge. If they thought I was just going to swallow my pride and accept this life, they were mistaken. I realized that playing along was the only way I could keep myself in a position to act when the time was right. I couldn't let my emotions dictate my actions. I had to be smarter than that. I watched her, studied her routines, noticed every interaction she had with her boss. I became hyper-aware of every detail around me, storing everything away like ammunition for a future war. Raising that child wasn't just a punishment, it was fuel. Every sleepless night, every forced smile, every moment of quiet resentment, it all built up inside me like a storm gathering strength. I knew I couldn't lash out recklessly, couldn't let my anger consume me and ruin whatever chance I had at reclaiming my dignity. So I played my role. I kept my head down, wore my mask, and waited. In those moments of silence, I made a promise to myself this wasn't how my story would end. I wasn't going to let them win. They thought they had broken me, but they had only given me more reasons to fight back. Revenge wasn't just a passing thought anymore, it was a certainty. And when the time came, I would make sure they both felt every ounce of the pain they had put me through. Revenge isn't about rash actions, it's about patience and precision. I realized early on that if I wanted to truly make them pay, I couldn't act on impulse. Anger fades, but consequences last, and I needed their consequences to be permanent. So I started planning. quietly, carefully, without raising suspicion. My wife and her boss had underestimated me, assuming I would remain the broken man they had cornered into compliance. But I wasn't broken, I was focused. I began collecting evidence. At first, it felt small and insignificant: a text message she left open on her phone, an email notification flashing across her laptop screen, a whispered conversation in the hallway when she thought I wasn't listening. Piece by piece, I started building a narrative. There was so much arrogance in their behavior, so much confidence that they could keep me in my place without consequence. It made them sloppy. They left trails behind, breadcrumbs that led me straight to the truth I already knew but could now prove. Her boss was careful in public, but careless in private. He'd send messages with just enough subtlety to hide his intentions from an outsider, but not enough to escape my scrutiny. My wife, on the other hand, had started to let her guard down. I think she believed I had accepted my role as the passive husband, the one who would quietly raise another man's child without complaint. But she couldn't have been more wrong. Every moment I spent pretending to be the doting father and forgiving husband was another moment I used to prepare. I forged connections with people in their professional circles, casual conversations at events, quick exchanges in passing. I learned things they didn't think I could possibly know. The affair wasn't as secret as they thought. People noticed things, people whispered, and I listened. The hardest part was maintaining the mask, pretending to still care, to still believe in the life we were building. I'd smile at her across the dinner table, nod along when she talked about work, and play my part in the illusion of our family. But every second of it was calculated. I knew that if I showed even a flicker of what I was really planning, everything would fall apart. I started documenting everything. Screenshots, voice memos, emails. I created a folder hidden deep within my computer, a digital weapon I could unleash at the right moment. There were nights I would sit alone in the dark, staring at everything I had gathered, and feel the weight of what I was doing. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my pride, and the pieces of myself they had tried to strip away. My wife and her boss continued to live their lives without a clue about what was building beneath the surface. They thought they had won, that I was nothing more than a puppet dancing on their strings. But I wasn't their puppet, I was a ticking time bomb. And they had no idea how close they were to losing everything. Every move I made brought me one step closer to the day I would finally expose them. It wasn't about anger anymore, it was about justice. They had treated me like I was disposable, like my feelings and my life didn't matter. But soon they would realize just how wrong they were. The pieces were all falling into place, and the end of this story was no longer theirs to write. It was mine. The day of reckoning finally arrived. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic, just a quiet morning where everything felt unusually still, like the world itself was holding its breath. I had spent months gathering evidence, connecting dots, and preparing every detail. Now it was time to act. I knew there would be no second chances. If I wanted this to work, everything had to be precise. My wife was at work, her boss tucked away in his glass office, both of them oblivious to the storm about to crash down on their lives. I started by sending everything I had collected: screenshots of their conversations, proof of their arrangement, emails detailing their twisted agreement to key people in the professional world. HR board members, influential colleagues, no one who mattered was left out. I didn't stop there. I sent copies to their families, to mutual friends, to anyone who would understand the weight of what had been done. I didn't want silence, I wanted echoes. I wanted their betrayal to ripple through every corner of their carefully curated lives. Within hours, chaos erupted. My phone buzzed with calls and messages, but I ignored them all. I wasn't interested in explanations, apologies, or excuses. I had given them every opportunity to choose differently, to treat me with an ounce of respect, and they had both thrown it away without hesitation. Now they were reaping what they had sown. My wife came home in tears that evening, her face pale and her voice trembling as she tried to explain herself. But there was nothing left to explain. The damage was done, and it was irreversible. Her boss, once so confident and untouchable, was under investigation. The company had no choice but to act quickly to protect their reputation. His carefully constructed empire was collapsing under the weight of his own arrogance. My wife, on the other hand, lost everything: the promotion, her reputation, the image of a successful, ambitious woman she had worked so hard to build. And me. I felt a strange sense of calm as I watched it all unfold. But revenge isn't as satisfying as people think. It doesn't erase the hurt, the betrayal, or the humiliation. It doesn't rebuild trust or fix broken pieces of your heart. What it does give you is closure. A door slammed shut, a chapter finished, a sense of finality that allows you to move forward without looking back. In the aftermath, I packed my things and walked away. The house we shared, the life we built, it all felt tainted, like ashes in my hands. I didn't care what happened to her or to him after that day. Their fate wasn't my concern anymore. All I knew was that I was free from the lies, the manipulation, and the weight of pretending to be okay. Starting over wasn't easy. Healing from something like this never is. But every step I took away from that mess felt lighter, like I was shedding layers of grief and anger with every mile. I didn't regret what I had done. They had made their choices, and I had made mine. Looking back, I realized that betrayal has a way of exposing people, not just the ones who betray, but also the ones who are betrayed. It shows you who you really are, what you're capable of, and how far you're willing to go to reclaim your dignity. I had walked through fire, but I came out the other side stronger, smarter, and unshackled. Some people will say I went too far, that revenge doesn't justify the means. But those people have never felt the kind of betrayal I endured. They've never had to wake up every day and live a lie crafted by the people they trusted most. So no, I don't regret it. And if given the chance, I'd do it all over again. Because in the end, they didn't just betray me, they underestimated me. And that was their biggest mistake.